Australia ramps up push for inquiry into coronavirus origins as PM rallies world leaders for a review in the face of Chinese defiance and threats to destroy our economy. Scott Morrison has called on G20 leaders to support him in Australia's push for an independent inquiry into the origins of COVID-19 following threats from China to destroy our economy. The Prime Minister said a proper assessment into the deadly virus is necessary, dismissing U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's claims of enormous evidence that coronavirus started in a Chinese laboratory. Mr. Morrison said that while it's possible the virus came from a lab in Wuhan, the epicenter of COVID-19, the most likely has been in a wildlife wet market. He said an independent inquiry could help prevent another pandemic, which could originate anywhere in the world. I don't want to express an opinion about. I want to know. The best way to arrive at that is what I have proposed, Mr. Morrison said. I have written to all G20 leaders this week proposing exactly that process. The Five Eyes intelligence agency doesn't have anything to back up the claims made by Mr. Pompeo and President Donald Trump, the Australian reported. Mr. Morrison's efforts to get global leaders on board for an independent review have reportedly been hindered by Trump's push to link the virus to a Chinese lab. The Prime Minister sent a written appeal to Chinese President Xi Jinping and other G20 leaders. He's also had phone calls with Trump, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron among others. Australia has called for the World Health Organization to support an independent review into how the coronavirus started and spread, and has been lobbying world leaders. This has angered China, which says is conducting its own investigation through the Chinese Communist Party, which should be enough. The Australian government will lobby for more international support into the inquiry during an upcoming meeting of WHO's governing body later this month. It comes after an influential academic who writes for a Chinese Communist Party newspaper accused Australia of stabbing China in the back over its calls for an international inquiry. Shanghai academic Professor Chen Hong, who writes prolifically for the Global Times, said Australia's calls for an independent inquiry were a repeated display of hostility. This kind of investigation actually proposed by the Australia side is not an investigation. It's called an independent inquiry, talking about the lack of transparency. That is actually what it's about, he told 60 Minutes reporter Tara Brown. That is actually the problem, as there's no such thing as lack of transparency in the Chinese side. Australia is being and acting as a kind of divisive role, trying to point fingers, even stab at the back of China. This is actually not fair. China made its displeasure known last Monday when Chinese ambassador to Australia, Cheng Jingye, warned the Chinese public might avoid Australian products and universities if Australia continued to call for international involvement in the investigation. Maybe the ordinary people will say, why should we drink Australian wine? Eat Australian beef? Mr. Cheng said in the interview on the front page of the Australian Financial Review. The parents of the students would also think about whether this place which they found is not so friendly, even hostile, whether this is the best place to send our kids. Thank you for watching our video. Please show your support by subscribing to our channel and turn on the notification. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and Reddit for more videos.